Welcome to Yuppies and Harpoons. This is a special edition podcast. I'm the co-host, Joe Moeller. With me is my buddy, my friend, Jacob. What'd you think of the debate?
Well, good evening, everyone. Yeah, fresh off the debate. We're about 28 minutes since it ended. Interesting debate for sure.
It's the Republican debate. We should interject here.
Yes,
We're talking about the Republican primary debate that just happened.
The first Republican primary debate, August 23rd here. We had a number of candidates on stage. It was not as crowded as past debates, such as in 2016 when it was a full room. So I think that allowed for a lot more conversation from each candidate. Really, I think the moderators did a really good job of allowing each candidate to share and fairly equal time, which I think is good to get a good overview of everyone. I think some winners for sure. Some people who had a lot to gain and didn't quite perform as well. And we'll definitely dive into thoughts around that. But yeah, what about yourself, Joe?
Oh, I thought it was interesting. I'm still wrestling with the question of whether Trump should have gone or not. But I mean, the recent polling's just been so absurd with him being so far ahead. I mean, he's almost not quite, but he's if you look at some of the CBS polls, like I think they came out, or maybe CBS or NBC, he was up by, I think he was in the low 60s, and DeSantis was like at 16 or something. I mean, that's Biden Kennedy range, and I don't think anybody really believes that Joe Biden owes Robert Kennedy a debate. You know,
yeah.
So when you're getting into that territory,
538 polls right now. The average for today, at least, is 52% Trump. DeSantis 15.2, Ramaswamy at 9.7, and then Pence, Scott, Haley all around 3 and 4%, and then the rest are just names.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're seeing that. I mean, when you average it out, it's obviously closer. It just seems like there's, I don't know, with the recent indictments, and really the campaigns haven't really been going anywhere. And so I've thought about this before, that I'm not sure what to make of the current situation. Like everyone already thinks the race is over. I have no idea if that's a legitimate viewpoint or not.
No, I don't think so at all.
Yeah, I mean, we're so early, and now we have the first exposure of the candidates to the people. You can start having clips go viral. Clips are start going to be shared in TV ads. I mean, this is where this sort of stuff is generated. You think of all the iconic debate moments that have happened over the years. All you need is one thing to go viral, and so I don't know if there was much of that tonight, but I think to say that this is a shoo-in is still a little premature. We need to see how at least the first couple of debates get received.
Right. Correct. Yeah. I mean, if you look at any past debate, especially the first one, like Marco Rubio did really well early on, and then obviously he never really amounted to anything. So he did well tonight does not mean the next debate they're gonna shine like they did, and vice versa. The people you did poorly maybe learn and then grow from it. I guess on topic of bringing up Trump too, I'm a big believer if you're gonna run, people need to hear from you. Trump's take is people know who I am. I think he tweeted that out, or truthed it out, or whatever you call it now. That people already know who he is and what he stands for. At the same time, it was nice that he wasn't there because you actually heard from other folks. It wasn't a Trump show, but I do think there's a responsibility to show up at debates. We saw that in Pennsylvania in the governor race here in 2022. Doug Mastriano did not show up to debates. That really bothers me, and in some other situations. I think there's a duty if you're running to show up to debates, but at the same time, it's almost nice that he wasn't there to dominate the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm not sure Mastriano would have had anything interesting to say, knowing him. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's
Separate
like
topic.
when you're questioning the Jewishness of your of your opponent, then it's like it's best he doesn't show up. But whatever, that's a side tangent. But well, I mean, what was your who do you think performed the best in your view? I'm curious for your take.
Yeah, I think a little bias here, but Nikki Haley I think did really well, and so does Chris Christie. I think, especially I don't think a lot of people expected much from Chris Christie. Shows in the polling data as well, but I think both of them showed up with very clear talking points, very clear action points as well, not just look at me, but here's how we're going to implement these policies, which I think is huge. And they did that in a clear, concise way, and they also were able to kind of fight their points when questioned. And I think that they really shined on the stage. I'm really curious how polling will reflect post this debate for those two individuals. Chris Christie kind of has this mixed review. I don't think a lot of people love the man, but he definitely. I don't know if his ideas match people's perception of him sometimes. So that'll be interesting to see if people kind of lighten up with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pence did very well as well in the same way, but he's very much Pence. He's Mike Pence. We kind of know what we were expecting. Conservative. He's a Christian. I think he's also pushing the points that many people are avoiding, such as bringing up reforming Social Security. No one else on the debate stage will even mention that. And Pence has been very open for many
Well,
years now about reforming Social Security.
yeah, I thought that my takeaway was Pence was just a little too forceful, just a little
Mm,
bit. Um, but that's exactly what he needed to do because
right.
everyone was getting lulled to sleep with it's Mike Pence. He came out swinging, man,
He
and
did.
I did not expect that. I mean, he went after Ramaswamy, and
He did.
I don't think Ramaswamy expected it honestly,
No.
because he didn't. I mean, I think Ramaswamy expected some flack from Christie, and he had some stuff prepared, but Pence just took him to town, and I thought that Pence, um, the strength was, people get on Mike Pence a lot, and I think it's in part because people think he's too polished. But I've always, I guess I'm old school in that I appreciate a good polished politician. I mean, like I think you need to be able to do your job, you present well. And Pence
Mhm.
is just a phenomenal presenter. I've always liked the way he gives speeches. I've always liked the way he tries to build up the confidence of his audience. I mean, he does. He's a very good speaker, and you know, and then when you combine that with, it was very black and white for him what his position was. Like
Yes.
on abortion, you heard him heckling into the mic, like, "What, you really want to allow third trimester abortions? That's immoral. It's wrong. We need to do whatever your opinion is on that." Like you heard Mike Pence, you heard his view, you
Very
heard his view.
controversial topics. He's being black
Yeah,
and
and,
white.
and on Ukraine, I thought. I mean,
Mhm.
I thought he did a phenomenal job. He stood up. It felt like for a moment that the old Republican Party like was not just like back, but it was back with energy
Yes.
and tenacity and so I don't know how it's going to be reflected in the polling, but I can say as someone who was watching that, I was definitely I think if in terms of who achieved their goal, I left that debate thinking about Mike Pence.
Yes. Yeah. You got a good
And
point.
I think that's what his campaign needs because no one's thinking about Mike Pence right now. He barely, he actually polls pretty well compared to the rest of the group, I guess. Like the polling wasn't his issue. No one was giving him any money. you know, no one was donating to his campaign. So he has a lot of people who say, "Yeah, I'll vote for you, but I won't give you any money."
Mhm.
Um, and so I thought he did. I thought he did. He well exceeded expectations for me. Um, I actually thought, and I had really high expectations for Ramaswamy. I thought he flopped, honestly.
Yes.
I, I he came off as like there was something that was kind of childish and funny when at that moment when DeSantis was asked, and it was a bad look for DeSantis when they're asked like, would you support more funding for Ukraine? And DeSantis is like, and Ramaswamy goes like,
Right.
testing the
Look at
weather,
me. Look at
but
me.
he has this look on his face where he's smiling, kind of with like the space between his teeth, like, and it's just like, okay, yeah, I get it. I get it. Are we in fifth grade? Like, are you gonna give a
Yeah.
wet lily too? I mean, come on, like, you know. Um, and so I thought he came off kind of childish and frankly showed his age,
Mhm.
like in a way that was not. I mean, because he needs to show that he is mature enough, and so a joke like that, it might skate by if you're 50, but no one's gonna. The optics of it look really, really bad if you're 38.
And save that for social media, not the debate stage.
Right,
Bring in the people who love that in social media, but don't do it in front of the entire country as well.
right.
And I think also another fault of his was a lot of unconnected thoughts and a lot of points made that I didn't have context around. Even though I'm pretty well informed, I feel like he was saying things and I didn't know what he was actually trying to say. I think one of it down in his closing remarks, he made. Just want to pull it up here. Yeah, uh, he says there's three branches of government, not four, and I was a little confused by what he meant by that. Is that the Justice Department, or and maybe
Yeah,
that's where I need to study up
it's
a
the
little bit more.
bureaucratic state.
Yeah,
Yeah, the administrative
and I,
state,
I
and that's such
feel like
a
it just brought
that's
more
such a Twitter
context.
line.
It is right
Yeah,
where I think he failed to communicate on a debate stage the way you need to versus social media. Um,
yeah,
and I think when he was back in the corners,
and I
he didn't
thought
know how to fight
actually.
back.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was just that when he didn't really fight back, and he didn't have ground to stand on certain issues once
Well,
he was really pressed.
I thought, and this is going back to Pence again. Like Pence is, people forget. Like Pence is a good debater. He
He is.
floored Kamala Harris. I mean, he took care of
Yes.
her. And that was at a time when the Trump campaign really needed it after that disastrous whatever that first debate was. But Pence, Ramaswamy's like, I would, you know, I don't want to send money, $27 billion to Ukraine. I want to take that money and put it towards this, the invasion of the southern border. And it's like, okay, that's a nice line. And then Pence is like, that's a pretty small view of America. And I'm like, boom.
Wow.
I was like, good line. Um,
Yeah, I
and
felt I
it,
felt
it,
very like empowered as an American. Like, yeah, he's right. Like, America is good. Like, let's I felt like he was a commander in chief in that moment. Pence was.
yeah, it did. It felt like he was. Now, at times, he would step back and be. I mean, he would interject just a little bit too much, but
Yes.
it. Other than the times where he was interjecting a little too much, it felt like he was commanding the stage.
Mm-hmm.
But well, enough about Pence. What
Well,
did
well,
you?
and I think
Good.
one more thing actually before.
Yeah, sure,
I
go
think
for
he
it.
did a fantastic job of highlighting what Trump and him did, doing that really well without praising Trump and giving Trump undeserved credit. I think he was saying, "We did these things. Here's how I helped with these negotiations with Mexico, or whatever the situation example was at that point in time." But he didn't like elevate Trump. Where he understood that there needs to be a separation almost of there was a
Mm-hmm.
before January 6th Trump and there was an after January 6th Trump. Let's focus on what he did well and how I helped and assisted with that, and how I have the credibility to do that again, without really piggybacking off of Trump either, and saying like, "Oh, I rode the bandwagon." It was saying how he
Mm-hmm.
was involved in certain successes of the administration, and then when it came time for defending Trump, he was very clear in his position. I stand with the Constitution. I look at the Constitution, what that does, and I follow that. That's the rule book. I won't suspend the Constitution. Um, and I also really appreciate the question the moderators asked of the all the debaters. Do you think Pence did the right thing?
Yeah.
I think that was probably the most shocking question asked tonight, in my opinion, of really kind of putting the party on its heels of which way is this stage going to hold, and pretty much everyone showed support.
Did I miss
to
this,
Pence.
or did Ramaswamy not?
Yeah,
I don't know if I missed this or not, but did Ramaswamy answer that question?
He was the only one who did not speak, I believe, on that one. Or I don't think he gave.
I was like, "Are you
right?"
Yeah, so I got that right then.
DeSantis kind of answered it. I think that was one of his weakest points in the debate, was how he answered it. He was very reluctant to clearly say he supports Pence's decision on January, or with certifying an election. But at the same time, he said, yeah, Pence did the right thing. He didn't make it clear, and he kind of fumbled over that question.
Yeah.
Whereas many of the others, they said, hey, we stand with him. He did the right thing. And I think that's what you need. At the end of the day, they're competing for the nominee, but they're competing to beat Biden. And that's the key. So when it comes to an issue that should have a clear black and white, such as was the Constitution upheld on that day or not, most of the people came forward and said, yes, it was, and made that very clear and said, we are united on this issue. I felt, the party seemed to be united, where I didn't know going in if that question would be asked, how people would respond exactly. And overwhelmingly, right. I felt like they threw the support behind Pence and said, no, the Constitution was upheld. Let's avoid this. Let's not have Harris be able to do this when we beat Biden in 24. Made it very clear.
There was also a lot more support for Ukraine too. I mean, I think that, there was a lot more people who said that they supported funding, giving Ukraine more aid than I anticipated, and so I thought that was really good too.
Well, I think the line was drawn on foreign policy experience and not foreign policy experience. Ramaswamy clearly doesn't have foreign policy experience, in my opinion, to understand that the U.S., if you just pull funding from countries, that's not going to have an outcome that you want. You pull funding from Israel. Ramaswamy was trying to praise Israel, but at the same time, he's on record
that was
saying
so weird.
Funding. And so you're sitting there saying, well, where do you really stand? And do you understand what would happen if that takes place? You want to say China's winning and China's benefiting from Russia invading Ukraine. Well, you start doing things like pulling funding from certain countries, we're going to have other issues.
I mean, on a very technical level, I don't think that. I mean, I don't know Vivek, and so I have no idea if he knows his shit when it comes to foreign policy. But his perspective is a new perspective. I don't think it's. I think it's actually very representative of a certain faction of the Republican Party. I mean, giving funding for Israel, foreign aid is just looked at with a high amounts of suspicion in certain parts of the Republican Party, and I think that Vivek, is trying to tap into that because a lot of that overlays with Trump's base, and so, I mean, I think you could actually make an interesting argument about funding, especially like military aid for Israel. Like as far as whether or not it should continue, it's like it's a wealthy country. It's kind of like, should the U.S. give military aid to Ireland? Like, or should it just give it military contracts? Like, to me, that's like an accounting question, and
It's more of
Yeah.
like how you do it, not exactly. Like,
Well, it's like
yeah,
it's like they're a first world country at this point. Like their economy, their standard of life. If you know, it's why do they need to be given aid? Why can't they just buy F-35s from the U.S. in our military contractors? Like that doesn't. I don't see why that's And so if Vivek went down that route, answering that question, I think that would have been a much more coherent way to explain the position. Whereas instead he was like, "We need to cut off funding for Israel because they're like leading by example," and I'm like, "What?" Like,
yeah.
because they have a
Friendships. I think
wall
it was like
and
friendships. Friendship is like you help each other out or something. Like it was. Yeah, it
I
was like are we
well,
friends?
yeah, but it was like we give them aid, but I guess they're so sophisticated that we don't need to give them presents. Like I was kind of like, all right, like I don't know. You had to make like multiple leaps to find it to connect what he was saying with what his previous statements were. And so it's like, well, if Israel's a highly sophisticated country and um it's receiving aid from the U.S., like to me, the logical question is why isn't it just receiving military contracts from the U.S.? It shouldn't be
Mm.
receiving aid. Vivek was like, we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about how great Israel is. And I'm like, well, okay, like what?
That's not like a
It's
debate. It's just
yeah,
facts.
it didn't make any sense.
And I think that's where there was a few. I think he was one of them. I think DeSantis also could have possibly done this as well. Is if you're running for 2024, you're also running for 2028, and you can't make the same mistake as George H.W. Walker or Bush. Yeah, Bush Senior there. With the I will not raise your taxes, and famously points his finger and makes it very clear I'm not raising taxes, and then he has to raise taxes under his administration, and that costs him the election partly. So I think some of the points made, especially with Ramaswamy, they aren't fully context. And I think once you're in office, would he still have that same belief, or is he just trying to get views?
Yeah, I totally agree. Apparently, I'm having a problem with my outlet.
I
So,
can't. I can't see you now.
yeah, hold on. Studio malfunction, folks. This is great.
Yeah, I'll
I don't
text.
know. I plugged a deal about the minute number.
You did.
All right, let's see here. Got some shady contraption here. All right. And you were saying, Jacob, in 3.
So yeah, you're running for 2028. You have to be able to stick to what your commitments are. So if you're telling me you want to withdraw aid from Israel, and it's 2027 now, and you're on the debate stage, and you haven't done that, and there's another series of other kind of positions made in a similar fashion of I think we should defund the Department of Education. If you haven't done that, it makes you look weak. It makes you look like you're really just tailoring to a certain base. You're not really tailoring towards the future of America. um, there's a reason why we do things, although some of those reasons need to be reevaluated. But by just gutting situations, that's where you get dangerous. Famously, Obama wants to pull out of Afghanistan, isn't able to do it. Trump wanted to pull out of Afghanistan, isn't able to do it. And you can see this time and time again of on the debate stage, there's no cost. They don't take the
Just saying radical
responsibility as if
things.
there is cost at once they're president. Once they get into the office, the data changes on them. They really understand the bigger picture. By doing X, Y, and Z, you have this reaction, and I don't think that's well thought out in some of the points made. And I think Haley, Christie, Pence, I think they all did a really good job of, if they were saying something, it's something they can actually work on, and it's not going to put them in a box. But at the same time, they weren't being shallow about their points being made. They seemed like realistic, achievable goals that will move America forward in the right direction without kind of making these outrageous claims that, sure, there might be support around, but in the whole context of America, I don't think are practical, or at least are going to be a lot difficult and very adverse reactions if completed. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the funding Department of Education is a clear example of that. By doing that, what are you going to do? Create a new department called the non-existent Department of Education, and that's how you're going to fund schools? Like, by defunding the Department of Education, getting rid of that department, you're just going to create another department, because we're still going to have schools. Are you saying that we aren't having
Well,
schools?
they might.
Um,
Yeah, I think they say that they
yeah,
basically want to fuse it with the Department of Labor.
yeah, you know,
Uh,
possible,
yeah,
but
and then if
you know,
and then the Department of Labor will just have its budget go up by the amount that the Department of Education had allocated to it
yeah,
in the previous
and
budget.
that's where I don't
It's
think
just
it's a practical idea.
yeah,
There's a reason there's separate departments. You want someone who's really good at education leading that department. The Department of Labor, you need someone who's really good at labor and all the nuances within the labor department. That's already a huge department that controls a lot. I mean, that's one of the most important cabinet positions. Um, why put more responsibility there on on
mm-hmm.
one of the largest budget items of most states in the federal budget, or not the federal budget, but most states and local municipalities? Education's huge. We need the federal government to help facilitate funding for that, and also project something. Now, do you need to reform the Department of Education? I think that's the approach that you can make, and you won't put yourself in a box. Here's some areas that the Department of Education needs to be fixed. I think everyone can agree it's probably not a perfect system. So let's look at how do we fix what we have right now, rather than just saying, "Oh, I'm going to gut it," and that's the solution. It's not the solution. You're just going to make another bureaucracy in a different department. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Ramaswamy clearly has a. I think it's important to actually try to take politicians at their word and then slam them when they don't follow it. I think if you take him at what he says, he believes he can conduct mass layoffs and drastically decrease the size and scope of government. That's what he would. That's what his pitch is. And I don't know necessarily what would happen if that were to occur. I don't really think anybody does, and I think that's kind of the quick access that a talking point like that gives you to people liking you. And so if I just go in and people are pissed off about a whole host of different subjects, like I mean, you look at it, like on the left, for instance, you'll see that there's a Senate filibuster. Get rid of the filibuster, and then they find out that I don't know the majority. If you add up the majority of Republicans who, if the Republicans control the Senate and then they add up all the votes that they got, they find out the popular vote is vastly more in favor of Democrat senators to Republican senators. And then they'll say, well, we got to get rid of the Senate, And then they see a mean video of an ICE agent. And they're like, oh, we got to get rid of ICE. And, it's just like, you see this on both sides where
Yes.
anytime something is pissing you off, you just get rid of it. And it's like, well, and that's what gets all the hoorahs. That's what gets all the everyone's clapping and at the 20,000 in the stadium. That's what attracts all the attention and the glamour. You can wave and be like, yeah, that's right. We're gonna just we're gonna get rid of the Department of. I mean, why have any departments? Maybe departments. Maybe he should just say that like departments are actually unconstitutional. Just say that. And the only guy that should be running any sort of agencies. You can have an agency, but the president needs to be the head of it and running it. And we need to get rid of the Department of Labor, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Education, the Department of Homeland Security. Just get rid of it all. You know, why not? I mean, I'm sure they've all
It's
done
like, are you
fucked up
running
stuff.
for a position in
So
government, or are
I
you going to be a volunteer position as president?
yeah,
Because you're not going
and
to have
so
anyone around you.
and that's actually one of the areas. This is like one of the areas where I would say maybe more of of a liberal of a liberal tendency where, well, I don't have sympathy towards like throwing out the Senate, throwing out the Electoral College, throwing out ICE agents. You know, I think all that's ridiculous. But there does seem to be this idea in like liberal philosophy that, or the liberal view of government on the modern left, the moderate left, where you can reform government, and conservatives will always jump at the opportunity that when the government fails, it that's just emblematic of the it's like it's the governmental nature that government is
Mhm.
inefficient and that it can't be run better. And I've never been solely convinced on that. I think that you can have governments that operate at a higher level of efficiency than others. Conservatives always talk about how the private sector is more efficient. I have to deal with hours hour logging issues on my timesheet with the university that I work for as security at the school that I go in my law school. It is so unbelievably bureaucratic. I did an internship at for Governor Sununu's office. They get stuff done better than these awful bureaucrats that exist in at UNH. And you know I and so from a philosophical level, I don't really think that getting just throwing out government agencies is necessarily the uh it might solve the problem from the fact that you have inefficiency, like you're going to have inefficiency anywhere, or you have corruption as you're going to have corruption anywhere. But I don't think that necessarily is a persuasive way of saying this is the best course of action that we can take. Like I think that the
Mhm.
Department of Education, there are reforms that you can put into the Department of Education that would safeguard it, or not safeguard it, but put it in a better position where the concerns that conservatives have are recognized and are addressed at a level that they would find at least mildly satisfactory, and would be
Right.
it would be comfortable enough for people on the left to have to also be in favor of. And so that tends to be my
Right.
and so just but if I want to go and like live it up at the debate, I could just say throw out the whole damn thing, burn it all down, you know.
Yeah, and I think the education question they asked, math and English is on the decline. Kids aren't learning how to read and write. And, how would you address that? There was a number of responses, and it was like, well, we just need to gut the system and here, get rid of X, Y, and Z. And, um, you know, I think Nikki Haley did a really good job of kind of trying to humanize, like, there's teachers at play here who work really hard. I mean, if you know a teacher, I know a handful of teachers. They are working super hard, long hours.
Yeah.
The emotional drain they have as well, because they go into the classroom and they see a kid who is wearing the same thing for 7 days straight, and just has to grapple with the difficulties of that. Education today, our school system is so much more, in my opinion, than reading and writing. Although that is a key performance factor for them, they need to be able to educate. But you go into any school today, it is a hub for everything in the community when it comes to children. And what has kind of happened is there's been so many issues that are left unaddressed. And when it comes to the children, they come to school, their lives are transparent to the teachers and educators, and they can't just turn a blind eye, because not only does that impact the classroom, they also just setting these kids up for failure, which is not their job, and they are committed to their job of trying to teach the kids. And so they're providing services, connecting them with resources, connecting the parents with resources, whether that's helping the parents maybe get education on their own, or whatever the need of that family is. it's so much larger than that. And
Mm-hmm.
the school systems today are picking up a lot of the essentially holes in our society that used to be picked up by civil groups and churches and things like that, which are not doing that anymore to what they used to be. A lot of
Yeah,
those
I mean they
burdens
have
are
to
now
bear the brunt
falling
of.
onto the patients.
Yeah,
Hmm. Because
yeah. I mean they
they're
have
like
to bear
the
the
only one
brunt
you
of
can't
our
turn a blind
social.
eye. So like
Mm-hmm.
I can live my life if I want, and I don't really have to think about all these issues. Someone who has a good job and doing okay for myself, and I don't have a lot of needs personally. I can probably live my life and turn a blind eye to all the needs around me. Whereas a teacher sitting there with a classroom full of children, even in good areas, good schools, and like a middle class school district, they still see the needs of kids, and they have to address them. I mean, they can't turn that blind
Right.
eye. And so I think when we talk about education, it does need a switch. Reading and writing is key. I think how many of them talked about civic tests and teaching what civics is. That's huge and very important to do. And I think we need to really bring that back. It's not, I think a lot of people's frustration is because they don't understand how the system works. The system's not designed against them. The system's there to,
Right.
protect the majority but support the minority.
Well, everyone's
And
so obsessed
I
with
think
like what like everyone's thinking like what is my kid going to be like given some like pornographic novel if they happen to
right.
stumble into the middle school library and reach up to shelf number 6 on aisle C, and it's like, okay, like is that really the issue that education needs to be focused on right now, or is it the fact that we have very very low literacy rates for the 4th grade, and that's a high
Correct.
predictor of whether or not you graduate high school? Like that's a great point. I thought Haley nailed it when she said that, and I was
Yeah,
like,
I think
yeah,
Haley.
yeah,
Yeah, she said. I think she said
yeah,
there's some woke funny things happening, but here's the real issues. We need kids reading, writing. We need these things happening. We need VOTEC, right? Make sure VOTEC's in every high school and properly funded to support the demand for VOTEC, so that if a kid wants to go to VOTEC and that's the correct route for them rather than university, then they have that option there and can go get a good $60,000-$70,000 job with no student debt straight out of high school. Those are solutions that work and are practical. And if you talk to
mm-hmm.
teachers, they're going to say, hey, here's what we want to do here locally in Lancaster. Our county-wide VOTEC is basically filled, and my local school district is implementing VOTEC into their school. So they say, hey, the county VOTEC is full, so we're going to create our own. And so they have limited um, classrooms for that, but they're in areas that had high demand for services. So I believe like cosmetology was one of them. And they're seeing a need, and that's what they're addressing. And they're saying, hey, if we can get more funding for VOTEC, we're going to expand this, but we just can't. So those are some practical solutions without getting focused on like the woke. Hey, is my kid watching porn in school? Yeah, there's cases of that. You can find cases of that. Um, but it seems like so often that, like, that's the only issue in our education system, and that's why kids don't know how to read and write. It's like, no, those are more or less isolated incidences. Yeah, you can find them, and oftentimes parents do step up then, and the system corrects itself. Um, and yeah, a couple kids are harmed in the process, but you know that's where parents need to step up, and it's taken care of. So I think that's a problem that's being solved, and we can continue to work on preventing issues like that. But it's not the main issue of why kids can't read and write. So
Another takeaway from Haley was I thought that she schooled Ramaswamy pretty good when she said that you've been attacking everyone here tonight, and it's not appropriate, and you don't have experience on these topics, and it shows. And I was like, that was
Yes.
the.
Well,
I mean, I thought Ramaswamy self-owned himself a lot,
oh yeah.
but that one I felt like that was the one. It was hard to land a punch on him, when he wasn't punching himself, doing all the finger waggling and stuff. But I thought that was I thought that was a good. I thought that was good. I thought that was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because he tried jabbing her, which she's tough. She's not a soft cookie. And I think he said, "I look forward to your future on the Lockheed Martin board." And there was another, I think, defense contract board he mentioned.
It's just
And
so,
she's like, you're going to make America less safe, and you have no foreign policy, and it shows. Like, it was a very mature and honest attack on him to say, hey, let's put you in your place because you're out of line here. I appreciated that, of kind of calming any pointless jabs.
Well, the problem that I have with Ramaswamy is that he's too dogmatic in his presentation sometimes. He kind of comes off as like the firebrand preacher that only the people in the congregation actually like, and everyone else, it's like the moment you leave the congregation, you're like, oh my God, whoa, that guy's crazy, and
yeah, good point.
yeah, and so like when he says things that I like him. Like he was asked a random question on abortion, and he said we need to reform our the discussion on we need to reform the discussion on abortion. We need to talk about how pregnant moms can tap into Social Security early, or pregnant women can tap into Social Security early. How we need to hold men more accountable. I mean, he just went point by point how we make adoption more accessible. And I'm like, thank you. Like, yes,
the nuclear
absolutely.
family is the best form of governance.
That was a good line. Yeah. Now he said
perfect.
it though,
I'm like,
and but still, like he said it, and it's like he still looks like an inflated balloon sometimes. Like, the nuclear family is the greatest thing known to humanity. It's like I think that's what everyone expected that he'd do when he like left stage. He'd shrink. The man's like 5'8", by the way.
Is he really?
5'9".
That's funny. Yeah. I always love it when you meet someone, especially like a politician, and you think they're all big and mighty, and they're like significantly shorter than you think. I like oftentimes I'm like,
that's what's impressive about him.
Like 6'5".
Yeah, but that's what's impressive about him is that you watch him on stage, and you say, "I swear that man's 6'1", and then you get up there and you're like, "Wait, I'm taller than him." Oh, that's weird.
There's not like anything wrong with it, but I always think, like, I don't know, it's just my perception of if they sound smart, they're taller. And I think there's some studies about that, even of that's just a natural bias people have. But
yeah, I don't know. I just drank the rest of my beer. This beer was weird. My roommate drank the rest of the lagers that I had, and so that was great. And instead, he left a citrus wheat beer, Summer Crush. Ugh.
Is that yours?
Ugh. Disgusting. So that was loud. But I thought someone that we should talk about actually was DeSantis. Like, what did you? I think you and I might have just a different take on how DeSantis did. What was your take?
There needs to be he's in a tough place, I think, in a certain way. Sometimes he does it to himself as well. And I think what worked in Florida and him and his, I mean, he dominated in Florida when the rest of the country had a blue wave with a red wave expected. He was the only one who had a red wave in Florida. And I think what has worked and how he communicates in Florida, I don't see it translating it to the presidential seat in a strong, clear way that brings people in. Like, he doesn't seem compelling in what he's saying. Even when he was saying something that I agreed with and was fully on board with, I didn't feel compelled. Like we talked about Mike Pence, commanding the stage. I didn't feel he ever did that. I can't
Yeah.
think of one
And
highlight
Ramaswamy can be
from.
very compelling too. I mean, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of that charismatic. And, I think that's part of his strength in a way as a governor of, he just gets the job done. But then him picking certain culture battles, I think that's going to catch up to him. And I think you're starting to see that a little bit here of people not really interested in it and different culture wars that he's picked. And a lot of time he's won them, but I think he's going to die out. I think that was help elevating him for a while, and now he needs to focus on, all right, how do you win as a president? Which he did well in Florida with, getting people out, registering to vote. He had a massive swing in registration towards the Republican Party in Florida, which then led to his overwhelming success there. There's certain things that he's done, and he needs to really duplicate and highlight and show that in a compelling way. I don't think he's communicating that well.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason his campaign is he has good polling numbers. He's the second highest after Trump, but it's declining, and he hasn't found.
It was in the mid-20s.
Right.
Yeah, I mean the thing with DeSantis is like I hear this from like my moderate Republican friends. It just makes me roll my eyes. Like I think he's a fascist or whatever. Like, he's not truly free market because he went after Disney. It's like Disney had the most privileges out of any company in the state of Florida, and then it chose to stick its nose in the middle of some hot button issue. It's like if you're getting special privileges from the government, shut the fuck up. Like, just shut up. It's like if Lockheed Martin came up and said, oh, by the way, we're going to use all the resources to like fund politicians to make sure that the war in Ukraine stops. Does any rational person here think that the U.S. government like, I don't think we're going to continue that contract, and it's so I just every critique on DeSantis to me just falls absolutely so flat and it's so sad. It's like conservatives want an enemy; they don't want to have the discomfort of defending somebody who's actually getting shit done. And
Right.
the stuff with the don't say gay bill or whatever, all that such nonsense. It's like, yeah, I mean, is it that hard to defend a bill that doesn't like introduce children in the third grade to sexual orientation? Like, is that, or are we just hiding behind, a slogan that the left created and we're uncomfortable talking about with our friends at our cocktail parties at the local, country club? And like,
I think that's
with
a key
DeSantis,
thing
it's
with
like
marketing in the Republican Party. Sorry. Well, just real quick.
no.
One of the biggest thing is marketing. PR. PR is very important. The way, if you have a good policy, don't market it in a way that's going to make it sound like a bad policy. And I think that's a key factor in the Republican Party right now is you lose people's confidence by the language used, even though it's a policy overwhelmingly with support in America. You can find countless examples of this. And it's like, wait, no, that policy benefited you. You love that policy, but you hate the name. It's similar with, Obamacare versus the Affordable Care Act. You can find, I think Jimmy Kimmel, there's clips of him walking the streets saying, do you support Obamacare? Never. I would never support that. Do you support the Affordable Care Act? Of course. I love it. It's like, that's the same bill. There's no difference.
Yeah.
And I think Democrats learned from that example, and they, Biden has been very conscious, especially with all these stimulus packages, of how to market them and making sure that they get out and people feel that they are good. I don't think the Republicans have yet to really understand.
And the thing is, DeSantis. See, the thing about DeSantis though, it's like, look, he did all this controversial stuff. I mean, he did sign like the 6-week abortion ban and the open carry law, which I thought was just, come on, man. Like, did you really have to pass that? I thought that was a little silly. But
Mhm.
like DeSantis, I just lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So he won a re-election bid by 20 points, and this included the Don't Say Gay bill. This included the war on Disney. He attacked the number one employer in the state of Florida and won re-election by 20 points.
Right.
20 points.
Winning Miami-Dade
Okay,
County
and
by
it's just
yeah.
it's the anti-market guy. It's the anti pro-business guy. It's like, what are you talking about? Florida's economy is doing great, and so
Mhm.
well, I guess where my frustration with DeSantis is that I feel the critiques. I feel like he's actually the effective politician. He's the guy who actually gets things done. He has a real track
Correct.
record for accomplishing conservative goals, and then you have some schmuck like Ramaswamy come along who can say things smoother. Literally, that's it. He can say things
Correct.
smoother. And he starts, getting support from DeSantis. It starts sapping or sipping, or whatever the word is, support from
Yeah.
DeSantis. And I'm just like, so he's talking about, we're going to defund this department, we're going to get rid of this department. And I'm like, DeSantis literally fired prosecutors that were, sorry, but
Going against the state constitution.
Exactly. He's the one who
And his
basically
job
went
is
and
to
clean
uphold it.
house the entire Florida. Like, yeah, yep. And so he brought in all his own
Right.
people, and then he's up there. He's sitting there. So DeSantis is up there on stage, and why do people kind of cringe? Because he can't smile well. Like,
Yeah,
he introduces
he can.
himself. Hi, I'm Ron DeSantis. I'm the governor of New Hampshire. I'm the governor of Florida. In Florida, we have a massive surplus. We defended parents' rights. We took on woke capitalism, and you should. We're going to turn this country around. It's like you get that weird and it's like, God, what was that? Oh. And then literally in the debate, this is what just made me want to scream at DeSantis, was he used the words "a time for choosing." I'm like, stop being Ted Cruz. Not only do you look like Ted Cruz when you smile, you're much better looking than Ted Cruz, by the way, Rod, but you look like him when you smile. Do not use the word "a time for choosing." That is the name of Ted Cruz's book. Okay, like, shut up. And he had some strong statements, I think, tonight. Like, he talked about the message above all, the importance of being on a mission, and translating how he focused on one thing, and how he was a mission oriented guy in Afghanistan and in Iraq, to how he was a mission oriented governor, and he had specific objectives that he accomplished. There's nobody on that stage. There was nobody on that stage who is more accomplished and has done more things that are in step with the conservative agenda than Ron DeSantis. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And
possibly Nikki Haley, but yeah. But still, no, I mean, his track record speaks for itself, I think, is what you're saying. I agree with you. His track record,
and he marketed it, and the things that drove the headlines were his accomplishments. And now the things that have to draw the headlines for him is photos and interactions with voters. It's everything that didn't drive the headlines before. It wasn't that Ron DeSantis, people thought that he looked charismatic and, had a nice smile and knew how to have a coherent conversation with you without you feeling awkward. People knew. I mean, people knew this guy couldn't debate. He did awful during the Gillum debates. It was the fact that he was a governor and he passed meaningful legislation that had real impacts for Floridians. That's why he won re-election, and that's why he was getting headlines. But the problem is that our whole political system is set up in a way that stuff doesn't matter anymore. And so you have a guy who's sitting up there who's more accomplished than anybody else on that stage, especially in the short run. I mean, you're talking about a guy who has a hot bat, who over the past 20 games has been hitting like 458, and if there's anybody in that lineup you want up with the bases loaded and 2 outs, it's Ron DeSantis. And then it's like, but I don't know, he has a pink bat, and that's kind of gay. So we don't, we're the Texas Rangers. We're not a very woke baseball team. So we're just going to kind of put that guy, and we're going to throw up a pinch hitter who we're going to call up a guy from the minor leagues who, has no experience. It's like, what? I'm not sure where the baseball analogy came in from, but anyway, I'm sorry. I'm pontificating and ranting on and on and on.
But yeah, man, I think you're hitting it on the nail there. Like, there are great things that people will jump behind. People in Florida's life are better than they were prior to what he did. Everyone else on stage talked about what they used to do. He's talking about what he's currently doing. So he's living with the reality of today and governing in this environment, which is much different than it was pre-COVID. So ride that wave for him. But at the end of the day, he just looks weird. I mean, he doesn't. He had his he has his middle part or whatever, and he does like a whole, just stands there like. I didn't feel like he had legs. Like, move around a little bit. He just stood there like, I'm Ron DeSantis. I keep people from doing bad things. That's not correct. I disagree with that. It's like, okay, well.
And yet, if he was being hired to be the nation's CFO, if he was going to be the CFO, everyone would like him. Like, yep, he's awkward. Can't put together a coherent sentence. Kind of makes me feel uncomfortable, but goddamn, that guy's good with numbers. Like, that's like,
yeah.
I don't know. That should probably be edited out.
He's like the CPA. He's like the CPA on stage, the smartest guy in the room, but like everyone just kind of falls asleep when they listen, and you trust what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's a CPA, but you don't really understand what he's doing, but your life's better for it. And okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. CFO. Well, he's not a CEO on stage.
Yeah. So anyway, well, we are coming up on the hour, so this has been it's getting late. I got my classes tomorrow, Jacob. We're running past 12:30. Yeah.
So
wow, this has been
a
fun.
Special episode of Yuppies and Harpoons.
Yuppies and Harpoons. If you guys like this episode,
presidential,
be sure to like. Oh, I think there's some overlap. If you guys like this episode, be sure to like and subscribe. Jacob and I greatly appreciate this, and it means a lot to the channel. If you have a negative review, like some of my friends, I won't name any names, please message me privately. I know you don't have my number. So if you don't, then just don't do anything and ignore the channel. So we'd appreciate it. All right. Until then, we will have another podcast coming out. This is the 4th one. We will hopefully have this up early Thursday morning. The following podcast, Jacob and I will be having on a friend of mine named Dom Damaso. He is the host of the Logos Project, and we will be discussing the movie Oppenheimer and the philosophical, historical, psychological, moral, theological, all this stuff, all the implications that are just saturated in the movie about our culture. Tune in next Wednesday for episode 5 of this podcast to hear more about Oppenheimer. Hope to see you there. All right, until then, Jacob.
Have a good night, y'all. Yuppies and Harpoons.
All right.